Hello, welcome to The Analyst at the Ashes with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
This podcast, of course, is in association with TNT Sports, who have the rights to this series in England. You can get to TNT by going to either EE or Sky or Virgin Media. Also, you could get a subscription on Discovery Plus and stream it that way. But of course, you do need a subscription and you must be at least 18. Terms and conditions apply. So, our podcast is also provided by Betfair, and Betfair's odds at the start of today's play were not good for England, with Australia 63% and England just 32%, even for a pink ball test match, and even England winning the toss and batting first. So it was all, Australia favoured, partly because I suppose they'd won the first test. But what did you feel at that point?
Well, I thought it was a good toss for England to win. I mean, the stats say bat first at the Gabba, so that was the first job done, and England won the toss again. They won all the tosses against India, but only drew that series 2-2, so they had a good run with the coin. Of course, they didn't make it count in Perth, so I thought, definitely bat first. So that was something in England's favour, but I'm sure those odds might have changed at 5 for 2.
5 minutes.
So I'm interested in what the odds are now, because I'm trying to work out what sort of day that was overall, because it had a sting in the tail at the end with that wonderful partnership. Great for the England supporters that were here, that unexpected boost at the end, Jofra Archer and Joe Root. So what are we looking at now then?
Well, Root has worked so hard to get England a little bit of an advantage, hasn't he? I mean, amazing performance by Joe Root today. We'll go into more detail about it in due course, but his 40th Test 100, his first, of course, in Australia. A wonderful moment for him, having come in at 5 for 2 as well in the third over, only about 14 balls bowled before he had to come in and get his pads and helmet on. All that work from Joe Root, 6.5 hours of batting, and the advantage to England is only marginal. So now Australia are 55% chance of winning the game, and England 39. So it's gone up slightly for England. I mean, it's slightly sort of narrowed the gap between them. I don't agree with those odds. I think that England are in a good position now. 325, which is an average of about 34, 35 per batsman, if you take the 9 wickets into account. And that is about the average score that has been made in day-night test matches, and the team that made those runs in the first innings, 300 plus, has won virtually all those day-night games. So I think England are in a good position. I think it's a good pitch. But I think getting those runs on the board and enabling England to hopefully bowl with a newish ball when it comes to the sort of twilight tomorrow. It depends how long these guys bat, of course. I mean, if Root and Archer could bat for another hour, England would be ecstatic. I thought that England would try and do that today. When Stokes and Root were batting so well, so sort of resolutely in that 5th wicket stand, I thought, they're heading here for the close at, say, 250 for 5, and they can kick on tomorrow and get 350, 400, and then get Australia in when it's twilight. But I suppose that isn't going to quite happen, so it's more in the balance.
Yeah. It was another brilliant day's cricket, wasn't it? We only had 2 days in Perth, and there was so much to talk about, so much to enjoy, so much to get frustrated by at Perth, particularly if you're an England supporter, joyous about it if you're an Australian supporter. I thought today had almost everything as well, didn't it? It was another brilliant day's Test cricket. Absolutely compelling. It had that astonishing start, then the recovery. Zach Crawley, for example, going out there on a pair, making runs. It had the Joe Root 100. It had some brilliant pieces of fielding. Wonderful effort from Inglis to turn it back in Australia's favour with that run out of Ben Stokes. Fabulous catch by Alex Carey, almost unbelievable catch. Jonathan Agnew came in the TMS box and he said, I think that's one of the best catches I've ever seen, because he was running back and he was under pressure from Labuschagne, and it was the pink ball and it was the dark night sky. Fabulous. And then right at the end we had that 61 partnership in no time between Jofra Archer, who looked as though he should be batting in the middle order the way he played. He hit it so cleanly.
He claims that he should be batting in the middle order, doesn't he?
What I would say then is produce the runs that show you should be batting higher, because we have seen from him in the past that he is capable, haven't we? In one-day cricket, for example, we've seen he is capable, and he showed tonight. And what I liked about England what I really liked about England is that they changed gear in the last 10 minutes. They didn't go hell for leather. They said, right, actually, now Australia can't bat tonight. We're going to knock the ball around, pick up ones and twos, just boost the score, come back tomorrow, make them get their boots on in the morning. I thought that was really good from England. And it may seem obvious, but you don't always see that cricket. You often see the tail. I was with Glenn McGrath, and he was saying, I think they'll just keep going. I think they'll just keep playing their shots, because they're playing their shots and it's coming off. But actually, there's some merit, isn't there, in just doing what they did. I thought that was excellent cricket. So, fabulous from Jofra Archer, actually.
Yeah. Well, England, I think, have risen like a pheasant today. Well, maybe a pigeon anyway. There's a pigeon over there, actually, Glenn McGrath. A pigeon that occasionally plummeted back to earth, but then soared up into the sky again towards the end of the day's play. Now, just looking at Australia for a moment, there is a reptile in Australia called the thorny lizard.
Right.
Do you know anything about the thorny lizard?
Well, I don't think I want to meet it, no.
No, you don't?
No, I don't.
You definitely don't want to meet it if you're an ant, because what it does is its saliva secretes a special substance which, when an ant dies, the ant gives off an aroma which warns other ants that this is danger. But the lizard, the thorny devil, actually secretes a saliva which nullifies that ant aroma, and other ants think it's a safe place to go. So this lizard just lies in wait for all these ants just to walk into its mouth.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Australian bowling is a bit like that, isn't it? They just dangle that aroma outside off stump, and the willing ants, the English batsmen, just fall into the trap, don't they? So we had obviously Ollie Pope early on, dragging one on, didn't need to play it. Harry Brook did the same, having done the hard work really, and obviously sort of chanced his arm a bit. Then loose drive outside off stump against Mitchell Starc, and then later on a couple of others as well. Will Jacks, Gus Atkinson, and Bryden Coss. They all fell for that rather. Atkinson
it's tempting, isn't it?
Atkinson was trying to pull, but they all got lured by the sort of likes of Mitchell Starc, just dangling it outside off stump and playing a loose drive. It's so frustrating. But the thorny devil is a canny operator.
So the thorny devil is Mitchell Starc, basically, is it?
Yeah, basically. Well, not only. I mean, a bit of Boland in there as well. And actually, I thought there was a thorny devil essence to the way they bowled. Brendan Doggett and Boland nagging away at Root and Stokes in that sort of middle session, not giving them any runs. Very, very tidy bowling, defensive field, no runs scored, 2 and over, and Stokes seeking something that wasn't there, tried to grab a single, sent back by Root, brilliant fielding by Inglis to throw him out. That was another kind of lizard just pouncing on that opportunity for the negligent ant, and off he goes to his death.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, sometimes run-outs, they just come out of the blue, don't they? Or it's just something quite random. But actually, in a strange way, Australia had worked for that, hadn't they? By building that pressure, England were going nowhere. I mean, England liked to play aggressively, but in that spell after lunch, I mean, they barely scored. It was basically something we've barely seen from England in the past, in the last 3 years, where they were, and that was Stokes as well. That was the captain, who was, you'd think. I mean, he's actually sort of, to use the reptile analogy, he's a bit of a chameleon as a batter. I mean, when he first started with, this attacking approach, he would go down the pitch and try and sort of hack it. But actually, we've seen him play in a more restrained way, and he's often, he's a better player if he does that, isn't he? But if he gives himself some time, and that's what he was trying to do. And I felt he was right at the sort of limit of his skills as he was batting out there. He was using every ounce of skill, experience, whatever, tenaciousness, and then that error because of the pressure that Australia had built. So yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant piece of fielding, but Australia kind of, I agree with you, I think they kind of earned it.
But in a way, they were allowed, Australia, to get back into the game by Harry Brook's sort of wanton performance. So our Betfair exchange today, where we debate an issue from today's play, is about Harry Brook and his batting. I mean, people get so frustrated. Somebody said to me on Twitter, is he stupid or mad? And I said, well, sometimes a bit of both, because it was a bad calculated piece of calculation, that shot he played. Starc hadn't bowled, had he, for the whole session?
Well, they kept him back.
They kept him back.
For the lights, really.
Yeah, they kept him back to bowl in the twilight, exactly. And so England had prospered really quite well. And Brook, after some sort of madcap early shots, I mean, he had 16 off 11 balls, and it was a highlights package all of its own, wasn't it? That early stuff, including, by the way, an amazing attempt by Alex Carey to stump him when he went for a bizarre sort of ramp shot early in his innings, and Carey was up to the stumps, whipped off the bails, but Brook actually managed to get back, incredibly. But I mean, and Carey, by the way, was a sort of hidden star today. I thought his keeping was amazing. You know, some of the sort of work behind the stumps, some of the catching, brilliant diving catch early on, that running diving catch at the end. I mean, fantastic, faultless performance by Alex Carey. But Brook, why doesn't he just bat normally? You know, why does he have to, when they go on the leg theory, back away outside leg, give himself acres of room and try and thrash it through the offside? I know he still averages over 50 in Test cricket, but you sort of feel he could be doing so much better.
Yeah.
And just to finish on that, you know, it was such a key moment in the game because Starc had just come back on. England had secured a good position with Root and Brook together, you know, sort of heading towards a potential score of 400. And then he let Starc in and then exposed Stokes to his nemesis, which is Mitchell Starc.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to know what goes through his mind, really. I mean, he's so talented. Like you, when I watch him, I think this guy's got so much time. He's got so much ability, and you feel, I mean, he scores lots of runs, doesn't he? I mean, he's successful. He averages in the 50s, but you wonder whether he could do better. Perhaps we're projecting, some of our own, or I don't know, almost like envy onto him. You know, you look at him, you think, gosh, I wish I had that talent. I wish when I was sort of 16 or whatever, I had that talent that had been given to me by nature or whatever. And you always feel with him that he should therefore make more of it. But I think today that it was frustrating because the ball was wide, wasn't it? And it was kind of a sucker ball, really. Mitchell Starc just come back into the attack. He's the main threat. Why don't you just see him off, or you just play sort of just within a certain framework? But he doesn't seem capable of doing it, and I can understand why England supporters are frustrated. And look, England are in a okay-ish position, but if Harry Brook bats for 3 hours, they're in a brilliant position. Okay, and you're not always going to bat for that long, are you? Because it's the nature, it's cricket. Something's going to happen, but you feel do less to bring about your own downfall.
And of course, he had at the other end Joe Root, who very rarely brings about his own downfall. I mean, he failed in the first test in both innings. This time, he got stuck in. He probably had a little bit of luck early on with that edge off start, which just fell wide of Steve Smith.
Well, Smith got his hand underneath it. It would have been a brilliant catch, though, if he'd taken it.
Yeah.
If anyone's capable of taking it, Steve Smith is. It would have been a brilliant catch.
But just a hint of good luck there for Root. But otherwise, a flawless performance. He took stock early on, and then was fluent for a bit, and then he got a bit stuck, but he just stuck in. And I love the way that Australia tried different tactics. Initially, they tried to tempt him outside off stump. And by the way, I noticed, his flaw that was sort of flagged up before the series was a half a bat outside off stump, a sort of 45-degree angle bat instead of either 90-degree or vertical. And sometimes he has got a lot of runs with that little run shot down to third man, but it was also a risky shot in Australia. I noticed today he got his hands much higher and was able to play that horizontal bat shot with the bat, perpendicular to the ground when the ball was short and outside off stump. So he'd adjusted his method to counter that approach. Then working it off his legs as well, and negating the LBW by getting outside the off stump occasionally and down the wicket. Carey had to come up to the stumps to stop him standing out of his crease. He's a constant thorn in a bowling team's strategies because he has so many different responses to their strategies. Anyway, he got there in the end. 2 fours, of course, playing the pull shot to get to 96, and then we were all living through the moment, weren't we, to see him to his first 100 in Australia. What a marvellous testament to his determination, resilience, skill, will, ambition, insatiability to get to that landmark in his 4th series out here. A wonderful moment for Root and his family. And I thought it would be interesting just to keep the TNT sports theme going, to ask Matt Pryor what he thought about Joe Root. Of course, he's part of the TNT commentary team today for this Test match, and he made 100 here in a Test match in Sydney, so he's got something that Root hadn't got until today. So I sort of asked him that, what's it like to make 100 in Australia?
It's, Australia is one of the places you want to score 100. I think a lot of people, when you finish, they look at your Ashes record specifically, and of course how you play abroad and in Australia. So to score 100 over here is a huge feeling. I think also it's all the support, people that have come over, Barmy Army, thousands of people watching and cheering. It makes it a very, very special moment.
And could you feel Joe's relief, satisfaction, huge kind of joy at that moment?
I think I could feel every Englishman's relief and joy. The whole press box, certainly our commentary box today, living every single run through the 90s, and to see him clip it off his legs and it go away for 4 to take him to 100. It's just credit to. I've been staggered with the conversations about Joe Root recently and questioning him as a player. He is England's greatest ever batsman, and he's very quickly chasing Tendulkar down to arguably be the best batsman ever.
You played with him in the 2013 Ashes, I think, didn't you? Could you see him being great then?
I think what was always stand out was his ability to laugh at himself, not take himself too seriously. He was always very talented, you could see that, but to have success in Test cricket, specifically in the Ashes, playing in Australia, playing in places like India, it's as much about mentality and, as I say, the ability to have resilience first and foremost, to come back from adversity time and time again. But when you are criticised, to be able to put that in a place in your head and then deliver a performance like today is just credit to him and shows what a quality character and cricketer he is.
It feels as if we've said these things about Joe Root so often, and of course we have, because he keeps on churning them out. I think the remarkable thing about him is sometimes batters' powers fail, don't they? Especially when they've been playing for so long at the international level. Sometimes batters' powers fail and they tail off. Root in recent years has picked up, and it has just been churning out 100 after 100 after 100, and you couldn't help feel delighted for him today. Watched his career, and whatever you say, it's about the team, whatever you say, that is going to be a special feeling for him to get 100 in Australia. No one can say he hasn't done it anymore. He's such a high-class player, and to get one here is absolutely fabulous for him. I noticed on the screen it said something like Joe Root 40 hundreds in Australia, 1, as if to say, you've only got 1 here in Australia. Well, okay, give him some credit. He's got 1. He's been close on a few occasions, and who's to say now? Well, England will hope that he can get some more in this series and to keep pushing them forward, because obviously they're behind.
It's a huge monkey off his back, actually, which I'm sure, even though he would have played down, he will feel. That he's proved himself in the toughest circumstances. Australia is a
well. Just
tough
put
place
yourself in his shoes. What you'd be feeling tonight?
Well,
you'd absolutely
exhilaration.
Yeah,
I think.
totally.
Obviously tired.
Yeah, a huge sense of I've done it.
Relief, satisfaction, joy. Happiness that he's managed to get England into a decent position. He'll always say that. But I think also just this sort of realisation in his own mind that he's actually delivered. You can talk a good game, but until you actually walk the walk, you can't really say anything with the greatest credibility.
Which is an odd thing to say about someone who'd scored close on 40 hundreds in Test cricket. And he has walked the walk, hasn't he? But it's those headlines in Perth when he arrived, average Joe. Those are totally undeserved. But he'd probably brush it off. But
it nags away at you, doesn't it?
You think so?
It's got to.
Well, it would nag away at me until I'd done it, and then you think, right, I've shown
there is going to be an ounce of self-doubt in his head until today, just because he hadn't actually delivered. And by the way, it now gives him 13,686 Test runs, which is exactly 2,235 behind the great Sachin. So, Sachin, watch out, basically. Wonderful day. Now, a great day also for an Australian, Mitchell Starc, who we know is an absolute maestro with the pink ball. But today he went past Wasim Akram to become the leading left-arm bowler in Test history. 415 wickets when he got Harry Brook out, overtaking Wasim Akram's 414. Starc saying, no, I'm not as good a bowler as Wasim Akram. I do think that over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, Starc has improved, actually. I mean, he's an Australian great, and indisputably. But I think over the last 4 or 5 years, he's got less flustered by, perhaps not getting his action quite right, or, giving a few runs away early on. He smiles when there's a bit of adversity because he knows he's got the ability to come back later in the game or later in the innings. He just keeps going. He's a wonderful athlete, isn't he? And today again, how did he manage it? 6 for today.
6 for 71.
And what was the rest of the Australian bowlers?
2 for 249.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you can say where would they be without him, and it comes back to that point about this Australian side. I mean, if you'd said to England at the end of the summer, that come the second test, Australia wouldn't have Cummins, Hazelwood or Lyon in their team for Brisbane, you'd think, aye, here's an opportunity. And so it feels as though it's an opportunity they've got to take. Boland today hammered around at the end, 1 for 87. Green coming back to bowling, 8 overs for 40 odd. Dogger, asked to bowl short after lunch, and his figures aren't particularly flattering. Actually, Nisa came into the side today. His figures are, are tidy, but it was Starc. It was all about Starc for Australia, which is why I think when you see some of the shots that were played against him, I think that's why the Harry Brook shot is particularly frustrating, because you think there's 100 there for you. I mean, there was 100 really there for Zach Crawley almost as well. You think, and it's interesting listening to Alex Carey afterwards. Saying it could have been worse, could have been better. Not too bad a day. The pitch is pretty good. The pink ball's a bit soft. There's all some variable factors. It feels as though England 350 minimum. You'd hope to get 400. On a really, if it really went well for you, 450. But we'll see. We'll see when Australia back. But what about this Australian side? It's a curious team, isn't it? You look at it. There's Weatherald in there. There's Inglis in there. There's Doggett in there. There's Nisa playing his 3rd Test match at 35. It's a bit of a mixed bag, and there's no line. It's a bit of a mixed bag of a team.
It is. I think it's an ordinary bowling attack. Obviously, Starc changes that slightly. When he's bowling, it's the world 11, and when he's not bowling, it seems like a county 11 almost.
It's not Ilford seconds, as Graham Goose said back in the day about the New Zealand attack.
No, quite. With Hadley and the rest. No, it's not quite as bad as that. I mean, they're decent, honest bowlers, but nothing to really worry about. And Michael Nisa reminds me a bit, actually, going back a long time. A few listeners or viewers might remember Gordon Parsons, who played for Leicestershire. He was a game operator, but basically he ran in faster than he bowled. And Michael Nisa's a little bit like that, probably slightly better. I mean, that's being a bit unfair, but there's a lot of energy there, and not really a huge amount of potency afterwards. So perhaps England missed a trick, but you can't ever sort of avoid the fact that Starc is always the threat, and he does the job of sort of 2 or 3 bowlers, doesn't he? Because he can bowl with the new ball, then he can rein it back with the older ball and angle it across, and he in a very modest way said, no, I'm not as good a bowler as Wasim Akram. I think he is. I mean, Wasim Akram had the ability with the old ball to make it swing round corners. There are various sort of suggestions of how he managed to do that. I mean, his skill was incredible. And I would say he probably wasn't quite as quick as Starc, actually. I mean, or around about the same pace. But his skill was high, but so is Starc's. And I think they're on a par. And they obviously are with wickets. Well, Starc's gone past him now. His average probably slightly higher than Wasim Akram, but not much in it. He's absolutely world class.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's pushing Australia forward in this series. He's got a whole bag full of wickets. Now, what's that, 16 wickets?
It's amazing. I mean,
in an innings and a half?
Yeah. Of course, his sort of partner in crime, in a sense, Nathan Lyon, left out today. And when I say partner in crime, the great thing about the left armers is they provide rough for an off spinner, and that's what worked so well for one of the other left armers in that list, Chaminda Vaas, who took 350 odd Test wickets in partnership with Murali bowling into his rough at the other end. No Nathan Lyon today. The first time he's been left out of an Australian team for 13 years at home. I mean, that, and he was, I don't know if you heard his interview that he did with the TV station at T. He was not happy.
No.
He said, I was pretty filthy when I was told at 12:30 today, and I'll get over it, but it was pretty upsetting.
Well, that's what you want from a player, actually,
Bizarre,
isn't it?
and bizarre decision.
Yeah, but you want that from a player, don't you? You want them to say, oh, well, it's part of the team, but he probably feels he's earned that right as well, because he's taken a whole bag of wickets in his career, hugely successful, and only behind Shane Warne in terms of spinning success for Australia. I think the reason he was left out, well, a couple of reasons. One is that this is really a day-night test match. Sometimes they're kind of day-night in name only. There's not much night, so you want the seamers to bowl quite a lot under the lights. So I think that was, definitely one factor. The other one is as well, Scott Boland 100% fit, and Cameron Green is just coming back to bowling. So they might have felt that they were just a bit light on seam bowlers for these conditions. So it was a tough call.
Why didn't Cummins play then?
Well, because he's coming back as well, I suppose, and they deem he's not quite ready. So there was a long conversation out in the middle of the pitch yesterday from the Australian Brains Trust about looking at the surface, and we thought they were debating whether Cummins was going to play. Actually, I think the debate was, do we need a spinner or do we need an extra pace bowler in Michael Neser? So they've gone 5 pace bowlers like England did at Perth, and we'll see how it plays out. As it happened, England haven't quite made the most of winning the toss today. If they got 450, then that kind of would have nailed. Ultimately going to get 450, that would have nailed down their position for winning the toss. They're in the game, aren't they? I mean, you get 325, you're in the game. It doesn't guarantee anything. Australia, we've seen before, can come out and make 500, and then you're really behind the game. But you feel when you see that Australia attack, you feel, have England missed a chance, really? Have they missed a chance? And we're going to find out.
Well, it'll be the onus on the bowlers, I suppose, to try and make these Betfair stats, Australia 55%, chance of winning, England just 39, look silly. So come on, England bowlers, turn it on tomorrow. There's a little bit there in the pitch. There's certainly a lot of bounce. I mean, I didn't think it was quick as a pitch, but I thought there was enough bounce there if you got the length right. And I don't actually think Australia bowled all that well, in fact. I mean, they bowled too straight at Crawley and Root and one or two others. They didn't dangle that carrot enough outside off stump. Starc did, but the others didn't. And so really England slightly got away, but Australia sort of pulled them back. So it was another arm wrestle, I suppose. You like that phrase, don't you?
Yeah, well, it was an up and down day, wasn't it, really? One team were up and the other team were up, and you think you've got a strong position, and then Australia would have been absolutely cock hoop, I think, at like 264 for 9, wouldn't they? I think get this wrapped up. Not sure the openers would fancied 40 minutes batting, but as it was, they didn't have to go through that, so Weatherall had been relieved in a way. But that's 61 partnership for the last wicket, and with power to add. I mean, that I think is going to be one of the interesting things on the second day. Joe Root is there. Can Jofra Archer somehow frustrate Australia's bowlers, and get them up to 360, 370? That might be asking a lot, but Root's still there. So, I mean, that's the challenge, and that would be a massive fillip, wouldn't it? I mean, to come up with 100 partnership for the last wicket, that's the challenge for the England players tomorrow, and they're still out there. They're getting those bowlers to get their boots on for a second day.
Well done to Joe Root, of course, in particular, especially coming in at 5 for 2. I mean, how were our stomachs then? I mean, it was. I was sat in the crowd actually 5 for 2, and I was just thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a horrible next few weeks. But Joe and his colleagues have lifted the spirits again, and at least there is some hope, right?
Well, it seems to be, yeah. I mean, I think it's cautious hope. I mean, those odds would suggest that people still feel that Australia are in the ascendancy, because I think it's quite a good pitch. There was a test match played here where Pakistan nearly chased 490 in the last innings, because it kind of like just flattened out. So, the Gabba can do that. We've seen 517 for 1. Of course, that wasn't a pink ball game. So I think there's that nagging worry that England have quite not made the most of a
No, don't be
decent
negative.
opportunity.
Don't be negative.
No, I think there is.
No.
Don't you think there genuinely is, though, isn't there?
I don't know. I think England are going to get a lead here.
Okay.
Look, let's leave it at that anyway, because it's nearly midnight. Play begins tomorrow, 2 p.m. in Brisbane, which is of course 4 a.m. UK time. Hopefully you can set your alarms to get up and watch it on TNT
That's
Sports.
well worth it, isn't
or
it?
listen to it on
Yeah.
BBC TMS. Certainly if today's play was, if you'd woken up at 4:05, you'd have missed half the action.
Well,
5 for 2.
If you'd woken up at 4:05, you haven't pulled it.
Yeah,
I mean,
you'd probably go back to bed.
Yeah, you have your head in your hands.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow to review the second day's play. Thanks very much for watching and listening. Join us tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, watching. Goodbye for now.